Friday, and today's lesson is going to be a science lesson, which is going to be really fun. We're actually going to conduct an experiment. You're going to need in your weekly packet, you're going to need this paper watching this video, because as we go through the video, you're going to complete different sections of each paper, or of this paper. So we're going to figure out sound. That's like our science kit unit that we're on right now is sound. Couple different things. First of all, I want you to pause for about 10 to 15 seconds, and you're going to listen to the sounds around you. Notice, like, what do I hear? What do you hear? So we'll quietly wait real quick. All right, so take a couple seconds and think about what are some things that you heard that you noticed. I know that when I was listening, I actually have my guinea pig is in this room, so I could hear him scurrying around. I could hear my dogs next door. I could hear some birds outside. I could hear the air circulating in my house through the vents. So you might have noticed some things in your house or wherever you are as well. So that is kind of what we're going to be, is what makes those sounds that we hear. So the first thing I want to show you, I have quite a few cups here, and each of these cups is going to help us. So the first one, this cup has nothing in it. It just kind of looks like a drum. So when I tap this cup, what do you hear? You hear the pen hitting this drum. So what's causing the sound, right? So when I'm tapping it, the pen, right? This is the thing that is moving to cause the sound of these two items tapping together. So as I tap them together, I can hear that sound. It's hard to see though when I have sound, what creates it? Like, how is the sound getting to my ears? Now, this cup had nothing in it. I'm going to set it to the side for a minute. Grab this cup right here. Now, this cup just has water in it. The top is set up the same as the first cup, so it's like a drum. And when I tap, I'll move in close. Try to steady. Okay. What happened to the water when I tapped the cup? We'll do it again. Ready? Wait for it to settle. It moved, right? So when I was resting my cup, the water's pretty even, pretty flat. Might just move just a little bit from my hand, but when I tap it, you can see it kind of ripples and waves. Now, what we hear when we hear sounds is waves. It's sound waves. They're not like the waves at the beach or the waves in this cup where you can see them necessarily, but you hear them, and that's what our ears pick up and hear. So we're going to kind of keep talking about what do waves mean? So one other thing I want to show you is when I tap it lightly, it moves a little bit, right? The harder I tap it, the more it moves. And do you notice the sound changes and gets louder the harder I tap it too? So that pressure creates different sized waves. So that's kind of our introduction to this whole topic of waves and sound. So now we're going to be kind of conducting a little experiment. But first we're going to make a prediction about what we think happens. I have some lentils and some rice we're going to look at. So we're going to make a prediction about the rice and what we think is going to happen in those cups when we tap them. All right, check it out. All right, so first we're going to take a look at predicting. So before we do anything, we're going to predict what's going to happen when we add the rice. So we know that when we had just the cup, we could hear some sound, we could kind of see what was going on, but not really, because we know that sound travels to us in waves. So I need to make a prediction. What do I think is going to happen when I add rice to my cup? What's that going to look like when I tap it? So it has right here, when we add rice, we predict, and you'll write your prediction. This prediction doesn't have to be correct, because remember, this is just what we're doing before we even do the experiment. It's just a guess. I'm going to add maybe the rice. We predict the rice will move. I don't know much more than that, but to me, I'm thinking the rice might move if I'm hitting the cup that it's in, right? It might wiggle a little bit or something. So I'm going to say the rice will move. You can put whatever you think will happen. You may think the rice won't move because we're not hitting it very hard, we're just tapping it. You might think the rice might jump. You might think that the cup will make more sound or less sound. I'm just putting the rice will move so far. We'll finish the rest after we do our experiment. All right, so we made our prediction about what we think is going to happen. Real quick before we move on to watching what happens to the cup and observing what goes on, I want you to put your fingers on your throat, on your neck. You can use both hands, you could use your hands, your fingers, but just put it there, and I want you to hum for a minute. Ready? What did you feel when you were humming? What did it feel like? You could even feel it when you talk. It kind of moves, right? It vibrates. That's what those waves are in the sounds that we hear. It's like a vibration. With the water, it's easy to see the idea of waves, but in reality, the waves are really just kind of vibrations through the air that we can hear and pick up on, which is what we'll notice a little bit more in our experiment. So that's pretty cool. So let's look and see. Real quick, we'll talk about this for a second. This is your observation sheet you'll use when we go in to do the experiment. All right, this is the part we're going to do as you watch me tap the cup. So we have our rice added to our cup. We have our experiment ready to go to see what will happen. It says this is the observing part. You're going to observe what happens when we tapped the drum with the rice on top. This is what we saw. So as I'm doing it, or you could wait until a little bit after, you're drawing what you see happen. All right, let's do it. All right, now let's see. I used lentils and rice because the lentils are a little darker than the rice are, so it might be easier to see, but I'm gonna hold it up close, so hopefully even though this clear cup, which isn't super clear, hopefully we can at least see it. So ready? Light taps. Now here's some harder taps. Ooh, can you see? And then I'll do some real hard taps. It might get a little loud. Can you see how the rice, it was kind of jumping almost, right? When the taps, especially as they got harder. When it's soft, you can kind of see it, but they're a little harder to see. But when you really tap it hard, it moves more and more the more that you tap it. So that's where on your observation sheet, you could draw multiple pictures, or you could write a note about what exactly is happening when I tap it. We'll try the lentils too real quick just to see if you can see it a little better. So some light taps, hard taps, and I'll try a little harder just to really see them jump. You guys are going to have to be careful with your volume. Whoa, look at how much they jump now. So the harder you tap, the more they jump, because those vibrations get bigger, they get stronger because it's louder. Anytime a sound is quiet like a whisper, you can feel in your throat, But the louder and louder you talk, the more your throat vibrates because it's creating more waves and more sound. So that's part of what we'll put on our prediction sheet. Now, we're going to focus on writing our conclusion about what we saw. What exactly did we see that we noticed when it came to sound? All right, now this is the part for our conclusion. So we've kind of talked about what happened, talked about what pictures we might draw. In the conclusion, you're going to write, did your prediction match what you saw and heard? So there's two options, yes or no. So either way, it's going to be, yes, it matched my prediction, or no, it did not. With mine, I'm looking back to what I wrote. When we add rice, we predict the rice will move. Mine matched because the rice did move a little bit, but we noticed something a little bit more than that as well. The harder I tapped the rice, or the top of the cup, the more the rice moved. So I would say mine was a yes, it did move, but I noticed even more about it. You might have a similar prediction, or you might put no, something happened that you did not predict. And either way, if that's the case, you'll turn your paper over. And this is the last part of the conclusion. If not, how was it different? And even if it's not, if not, because with mine, the rice moved, but I noticed more. So I could even do something here to write what I noticed was different. So I would put the rice moved, sounding any words out that I don't know. The rice moved more the harder I tapped it. So I could add a sentence like that. You could add, how was your prediction maybe different? Or maybe your prediction was spot on, or you want to leave it with whatever you said. That's fine. But if it differed from what you predicted at all, here's where you can add what was different. What did I notice that changed or surprised me? So that is the last part. So we've learned a couple of things and we'll review them. All right, guys, so we finished writing our conclusion. Awesome job. I'm glad some of you may have wrote on the back and wrote if your prediction was wrong and it needed to be tweaked a little bit, if your prediction was right and you wanted to add a little bit. And it doesn't really matter if your prediction was correct or not, because it was just a guess. And what really matters is what we can take away from the experiment at the end, which is kind of just that sound travels in these waves and vibrations, and that's what we're hearing. So we saw that with smaller sounds that were quieter, we're able to hear a lower frequency, the vibrations and the waves are a little lower. The bigger, the larger the sound, the more vibrations and waves there are. And we could see that with our water, with our rice, and the movement of those objects as it gets more and more and more. As those objects move, you can see with things like that, the sound versus, and we can feel it in our throat. But when I'm talking, if you weren't to feel if I'm not feeling my throat, I can't feel the vibration. So it really just depends on, some sounds are more visible than others, but you don't see it as it comes out my mouth as vibrations, right? It's just how we pick it up. So that was kind of our cool lesson. I hope you guys liked it and have a great weekend.